Morning.
First world problems or being told to get over it. Why do some of us feel guilty for our so-called small problems?
Yeah, well, the reality is this first world problems piece tells people that, you know, the way you're feeling is not right and not appropriate and you should feel a certain way. And what we're finding is this is really unhelpful for people and actually has a negative impact on their mental health.
It's pretty archaic, isn't it, that whole idea of, come on, mate, you'll get over it. And it's now, thankfully, people are realising how much damage that can do.
Yeah, because what it does is it doesn't validate how people feel. So not only are we dealing with some sort of situation, but we also deal with the judgment of the other person, the guilt of, I shouldn't feel this way. And one of the things that's really driven this is the happiness movement, where we're expected to feel good all the time.
Sometimes you don't.
Yeah, well, that's the reality, is that the world is... Yeah, we go through various emotions, but what we've said is negative emotion is bad and bad for you. Positive emotion is good and good for you. So every time people express negative emotion, we want to go, you know, oh, it's not that bad, or move on, or get over it, or, you know, appreciate the good things in your life.
Yeah, you hear it a lot, don't you? What about if someone compares their situation with yours when you're mentioning yours at the same time?
That's the worst. It's like, you go, oh, you know, Janie says to me, you know, I'm having such a bad day, and or someone says, oh, you reckon that's a bad day, let me tell you about my day. And it not only not validates that person, but it belittles them, and you're sitting there going, well, thanks for that.
Yeah, and some people don't listen, do they? Because, look, I have a little joke with a few friends. You go up to someone and say, I've got fingernail cancer, I've only got 55 minutes to live. And for the next 54 minutes, they tell you about their problems. Totally. But they don't actually hear what you say.
Yeah, but this is having a real ramification. And one of the things we talk about, because we've been researching this for about 10 years now in terms of how we handle struggle and discomfort. And one of the case studies we looked at is privileged children. So children that have a life that on paper seems perfect. And when they express, you know, I'm unhappy, or I'm not satisfied, or I'm feeling depressed, what they get is not, oh, you know, tell me about that, how can we help you? They get, what have you got to worry about? You know, your life's perfect. Why don't you get over yourself and just appreciate what you have? And this is devastating for our mental health, but also our ability to handle negative emotion, because every time it comes up, we're shamed for it.
And you look at what's happened recently, for example, the bushfire crisis. Yeah. Perhaps, you know, you lost your home and then you're comparing yourself to somebody who may have lost a life or a pet or what have you. It's the same sort of scenario.
Yeah, it's really interesting you brought that up, because a lot of psychologists are writing articles saying that, say I lose everything in the fires and I reach out to people for support, the most common response they get is, at least you're okay, at least the family's safe, could have been worse. And what they get judgment rather than support. And what's happening is bushfire victims are feeling guilty for they're labelling it materialistic. I should be more appreciative of what is going on in my life.
And half the time it's just about listening, isn't it? Like, we're in the midst of a whole different world when it comes to media and the digestion of information. This coronavirus situation, like, people see news, they see this, they think immediately, I've got it, I've got to go buy toilet paper, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Yeah. But, you know, you can't belittle what people are doing. Sometimes you've got to sit there and listen and just take it in.
And it's a great point. And the two steps are to name the emotion and validate it. Like, I can see that you're panicking or fearful, and that's a really normal response right now. But then focusing on, well, what's the most constructive action? Like, what can we do to improve this? And they're the two steps of, you know, name the emotion, validate it, and then focus on more constructive action.
Because I guess you want to try and find a balance, don't you? Because some people perhaps could leave that emotion going for too long. I don't know what too long is, because obviously it's relative compared to what the situation is. But how do we find that balance?
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's kind of case by case. And it's not about sort of piling on and having the whinge fest. But if someone is going through something difficult, even it might be trivial to you, but to them it might be really big, it is those steps. And then the key thing is focusing on, well, what's the most constructive thing we can do? So if it is around coronavirus, well, what are the steps we can take to, you know, reduce our chance of getting it, or to reduce the impact? But the key thing is not oh, you're overacting, stop freaking out, it's not that bad, that is not helpful.
What about the people that perhaps don't even say anything, but you might know them really well and they're just keeping it all in? How do you bring it out?
Well, this is one of the fallouts, is that, and particularly with men, is that, you know, that whole men don't talk about their emotions and you've got to be stoic and you've got to pull this stuff down inside. It's devastating. One of the things that helps people share is that with any time they share discomfort, if you support them, they're more likely to share next time. And this whole thing with validating this research, I use it with my kids. Like, it's the best. So rather than, you know, when my kids are upset or frustrated or angry, rather than that's not okay, you shouldn't do that, it's like, I can see you're angry and I can see why you're angry. And what that does is helps kids move on to more constructive behaviours.
With the, you know, like, this probably isn't the perfect statement, but that whole idea of goal setting through is so important too, isn't it? Because, you know, you can't be happy all the time, but you've got to realise that when you are down or when you are sad or when things are going to get better. Yeah, like, allow it to happen, but don't think this is not going to destroy you.
I love what you said then, because one of the fallouts of the happiness movement is we've picked one emotion, which is happiness, and said that's the goal, that's how we should feel all the time. Number one, it's delusional, and number two, we beat ourselves up when we don't feel good, and we expect to feel good all the time, and it's just, it can't happen. And also, one of the big things in our research with Deakin University is that people's inability to sit with negative emotion stops them evolving, because every time you want to get better or evolve or change, that brings up discomfort. But if you have this mentality of that's bad, you retreat back to old safe behaviours.
Because I guess it's not intentional for a lot of people. So if your child, for example, comes up to you and says, oh, I'm terrible, or that exam was really bad, you just immediately want to perhaps go, no,
yeah,
but you're actually telling them, I don't believe what you're saying. So it's about being conscious and going, okay, I'm going to validate that, as you've mentioned, and just really being conscious of what we're saying and how we're saying it to people, and as you said, Tim, listening.
Yeah, and you know, with the exam piece, is what I'd say to my kids is after every exam I came out and beat myself up and went, oh, I screwed that up, or I didn't do that, or I didn't, like, and just saying that's a normal response right now.
Well, I should have beaten myself up over a few exams.
Yeah, Tim, you should have tried harder, mate.
The part of the, and we'll wrap it up, because I love talking about this, but we'll wrap it up, because the best thing about feeling not so good or bad is when you do feel good again, it even feels better if you allow, you know, if you allow the natural flow of life.
Yeah, you can't have light without dark,
no.
and the scariest thing is that we've demonised negative emotion, and we've got to be able to sit with both to have a fulfilled, balanced, healthy life.
And because you said that in your report as well, there's 450 million people with a mental health illness?
Yeah, I mean, the figures are staggering. And if we don't allow people to feel safe or share or to be able to validate what's going on for them, you know, they won't. They'll bottle it up and they'll keep it inside. And like those rich, privileged kids, they just stop sharing because they get judged every time they do it.
How can we find more information on your book?
Well, the book's in all good bookstores right now. It's called Strive, and what it's about is our relationship with struggle and discomfort and how we have a healthier relationship with that.
Yeah, and if you take it on board, you probably live with that risk of using the word happy too much. You probably live a happier life.
Well, a more fulfilled life. Yeah.
A real life.
Yeah.
It's okay to not feel great all the time.